Chase Thomas podcast. My nephew needs me to record. See, I already hate it. I hate it.
All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas Podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ. Joining me down there in Decatur, Georgia, my good friend, fellow University of North Georgia alumni, Matt Green, is here. Also, the host of Georgia Voice of College Football. Matt, good evening, sir. How are you?
Good evening, sir. Everything School HQ just in shambles up there. Just almost lost 2 basketball games this week. Man, it was almost bad. Meanwhile, Georgia is over here knocking off top 25 opponents. Just man, that Wednesday night game. It's gonna be we're gonna have an instant reaction, I guess, here on Wednesday night after Georgia Tennessee.
Oh yeah, I mean, what awaits the Dogs and Thompson Bowling Arena at Food City Center is going to be pretty brutal here. Matt Green here getting back home, but you joke, but hey, the average margin I think of these games over the weekend were like 5 for these SEC conference games, and they're all close, man. Winning on the road in this conference is going to be extremely difficult, no matter where you go in the conference, outside of, I guess, maybe LSU, but the SEC is the best conference in college basketball this year, so no easy wins. Yeah, it was tough on Tuesday night against the Gators, but hey, you got out of there with a win. I mean, Auburn started with Texas in the same arena at this week, so Auburn survived and got out. Auburn almost lost to South Carolina on Saturday, so and they're probably the best team in the SEC this year. So, I mean, Tennessee, Alabama, Auburn, they're the 3 best teams in the conference. Maybe Kentucky, we'll see what they look like as it goes. But, I mean, they've dominated for the last 5 years. It's been one of Bama, Auburn, or Tennessee winning the regular season or conference title, and I think that will continue this year. So we're fine. Like, we're fine. I don't think we'll be number 1 in the country after going 1-1 this week, though.
I got tickets to a couple games in February now. So me and my brother got tickets for my pops. So we're going to the Mississippi State game here in a couple weeks, and then a buddy of mine is a big Florida fan. We got a whole group of us going to see the Georgia Florida. That's like the last week of February, I think. Okay. So couple trips to the Stegosaurus, some call it. Nobody calls it that, but yeah. It'll be a good time. Georgia has got a pulse in basketball this year. It's a lot of fun. I mean, the top 25 comes out Mondays, right? For basketball, top 25 comes out Mondays, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Georgia might sneak in to the top 25. What are they, 14-2 now? So we'll see. But let's get to the fool's ball. That's what the people came here for.
And baseball be here before you know it, man. Without looking, where is Georgia baseball in the perfect game USA?
Oh, they're preseason like top 5, I think, right?
They're number 4.
Yeah, there you go. Everything School HQ, some might say.
Wow. We're just going to keep it moving on this very program, Matt Green. Did you see, by the way, look, you and I are both University of North Georgia alums, proud alums of North Georgia. New brand. Putting out the new uniforms for the softball team. Basketball team's got the blue and white checkerboard that looks good, and they're leaning more into the blue and white with the new NG logo. I think it's pretty slick, Matt Green. But
no, I haven't seen any of this.
They're leaning into the Hockham, and I think it's good. Like, lean into the Hockham, but I think now we're so close, and this is our free advice. I think we just need to drop the night part of it. Just be the North Georgia Hawks. You got the Georgia Southern Eagles, the North Georgia Hawks. Let's just do that. Like, you're already leaning to the Hockham. There aren't any other ones, I think. Like, you got the Kennesaw State Owls, the Georgia State Panthers.
They're just going with this like little block diagonal NG, like a Colorado Rockies style, like one of those kind of. Yeah, I guess that's fine. I like that logo that's kind of the crest shape. That's got the hawk like looking at you with the UNG. That's that's my favorite logo they always use. But
I don't hate that one. That one's okay. I like that one. But I
think I had that one on my car. Like when I was in school. I was like, that one spoke to me. I was like, oh, I'll rock that one.
I don't know. I like the new brand. I like leaning into the black a little bit here. Like you said, the Colorado. I like the cursive North Georgia font, and I think they got that for the basketball team. But Yeah, man. Hey, they're moving on up.
Fair enough.
Also, Matt Green, we got some dog bites and some Tennessee Vols coverage that we're going to talk about here from our friend Nigel the Nighthawk, talking, on a pod divided here, Georgia and Tennessee. Also, another rogue SEC question that we'll get to here momentarily, sir, before we recap the CFP semifinal games from Thursday and Friday. But the Dogs, they actually had the biggest news story this week. So I think we have to start with your Bulldogs, Matt Green, because Carson Beck does not enter the 2025 NFL draft. Instead, he is on his way to Miami, and depending on where you see what kind of numbers it looks like NIL wise, no matter what the final number is, he's getting paid very well to play quarterback. Yeah, to play quarterback at Miami this fall. But hey, man, I think my immediate reaction was this made a lot of sense. I think I said on this program in the last 2 months and saying it to you, where I just thought it made a lot of sense for Beck if he didn't go to the draft, that this made a lot, like, do 1 year down in Miami. Shannon Dawson, I think, is one of the best offensive play callers in college football right now. The Miami offense was number 1 in scoring in the regular season here. They're right there with Ohio State in terms of putting up bonkers numbers. So I think that's why you saw Ohio State and Miami listed there. Texas Tech didn't really ever seem real to me, but who knows if that was actually a real possibility. But I mean, I think Miami's going to be really good again next year. They're bringing a lot of guys back. They've recruited really well. It makes a lot of sense for Carson Beck to ramp up his draft stock and get healthy, coming back from the injury and show he's good to go. But I mean, the best version of Carson Beck is still someone who can win you a lot of football games, and he's going to a weaker conference. He's going to have an easier schedule. And I think just like what you saw at Cam Ward, Miami's now at a opportunity where they could have number 1 overall picks in back-to-back drafts, which is a possibility with Cam Ward here this year. And he was obviously a Dynamo Heisman finalist. And I think Carson Beck, as I last checked, he's number 2 in now preseason Heisman odds, updated ones. So my instant reaction is it made sense for Georgia to move on and Carson move on from Georgia, and also made sense for Miami to spend and make a big commitment to Carson Beck, because I think it's puts him in a great position to make the CFP next year if Carson can get back to 100%. What say you, sir?
Well, where do you want me to start? I think like Miami, I do fully expect him to have like a good year at Miami, like playing against a little weaker competition. I'm gonna assume his receivers don't lead the nation in drops. Like that alone should help him have a better season. But yeah, you've seen now Miami do this 2 years in a row. I think there's a lot of speculation that, when I say 2 years in a row, in terms of getting a guy that already declared for the draft to actually come back and transfer to Miami. But there was a lot of speculation that, like, okay, he didn't get the draft grade he wanted, and so that's why he's going back to college. And I don't necessarily think that really sums up the situation. Like, you're hearing people talk, you don't believe any draft talk like this that's happening this time anyway. Like, people are just always putting out smoke screens. Supposedly a bunch of teams don't like Shedeur Sanders is a new rumor. So, like, if that's the case, like, who are the top 2-3 quarterbacks coming out? Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, and, like, I don't really know.
Quinn Ewers?
Yeah, like, maybe a lot of people think Quinn Ewers sucks, and some people think he's a first-round pick. So it's like he's kind of like Carson Beck in that instance. But, like, this is not a loaded draft class at quarterback. And
we forgot Jalen Milroe. Obviously, Milroe's the other one.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people think he sucks, and some people think he's a first-round pick. So, like, you look at, like, I think I saw that he was going to be making more than Anthony Richardson, than Jaden Daniels, than Caleb Williams all next year. Like, I'm not sure how that's possible, but I guess those guys aren't making $4 million a year. I don't know. But so I think there's just a simple dollars and cents. Like, we've seen guys get drafted. Like, it's not ideal coming off a bad season. His draft stock is clearly lower today than it was the day the season started, right? Whatever opinion you have about him, like, that's just kind of factual. But at the same time, like, I think he could have we've seen guys get drafted like based on, their film and they're coming off an injury, they're coming back or whatever. Like Todd Gurley was coming off an ACL. He was a running back coming off an injury and he was picked 10th overall. Like knowing he wasn't going to be back for the start of the season, I think he still wins Rookie of the Year or something. Like we've seen this happen before. And I think Carson Beck, 2 years as a starter, had enough film that like he could have been a top 5 quarterback drafted and that'd be a second round pick or something like that at worst, or third round at worst. So I think just from a dollars and cents, like he's going to be making more in college than he would have been making in the pros in 2025.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the world we're living in. I mean, what's funny? Do you know who Miami opens with next year?
Is it Florida?
Notre Dame.
Ah, wow.
In Miami. And Notre Dame been rumored with Quinn Ewers. That would be hilarious if Notre Dame Miami next year opens with Quinn Ewers on a 1-year final Russell Wilson type deal and Carson Beck on a 1-year mercenary type deal for Miami.
Yeah.
That's possible.
Yeah, it definitely is. Quinn Ewers is another one that's interesting. To where
Jackson Dart's
up
rising up a little bit. You know how I feel about Jackson Dart. Jackson Dart.
Yeah.
He's a player, man.
Jackson Dart's one. I left
He's a
out.
huge winner from all of this movement.
He could definitely be a first round. And I'm not just like the biggest Jackson Dart guy, but like you look at what I keep saying it, like I might sound like a broken record, but like if Anthony Richardson can be a first round pick, then like you can convince me anyone. Like if JJ McCarthy, if NFL teams are going to draft him first round, then I'm like, okay, maybe I don't know what a first round quarterback looks like. Like NFL teams convince themselves of guys who I just didn't think were ever that good in the college level. Anthony Richardson was never good in college, but
yeah.
But
I just feel like Shador, Cam Ward, and Jackson Dart, I'd be okay with those 3 going first round. Anyone after that, I'd be like,
yeah. And I think from a Georgia perspective, it's just, I wouldn't be surprised if he went to Miami just to get away from like the negativity. Like you got to be a different kind of dude in terms of mental toughness to just be cool with just an entire fan base bashing you, or at least half a good chunk of the fan base bashing you all the time. Like Bobo, he's a grown ass man. Like he's used to that stuff, right? Like I just think Carson Beck, Georgia fans can convince them that Gunnar Stockton played well enough that you're convinced the future's bright. Like, sure. Like we've seen one start for Gunnar Stockton. He could turn into a really good quarterback and have a good season next year. But I think personally, if I could choose either Gunnar Stockton or Carson Beck to be the starter at Georgia next year, I would choose Carson Beck just from an on-field perspective. But I mean, from everything that's going on off the field, like, and not even anything, I'm not even faulting him for anything, but just like the fan discourse about it, it's gotten so tiresome. Like, so I'm cool with it. Just like, okay, let's just have it be over and our fans can quit talking about the dude driving a Lambo and dating some chick that's got 1 million TikTok followers, probably more than 1 million. But it's like, that's not why Georgia's offense wasn't working well. It's like, it's just get that out of your head. Like these guys can compartmentalize. Like I just felt like those were narratives that were never really legit, but like, I don't know. It just is what it is. I think Carson Beck was a really good quarterback for Georgia, but I think, maybe it's time for a change and it'll probably be really good for Miami.
Is he qualified for a DGD or no?
I actually said this on Twitter. I was pretty impressed with myself. Someone asked that, and I said maybe we shorten it to just a GD. Is it just a GD? Maybe he's not a DGD. But I mean, this guy was a 2-year starter. I think they went 24-3 in his starts. Like led the SEC in pass yards. Was like led the SEC in touchdowns. Like the dude was a really good player, and I think if he's not on a team that led the nation in drops, he would have had a really good season again this year. And that's not to say he didn't have his struggles at times, but I don't know. It's unfortunate, like what all the conversation with Carson Beck, like what it was, but it's like at this point he's not a Georgia fan, so it's like I'm not going to die on the hill defending him amongst other Georgia fans because he is. And this is why I kind of celebrated when he put his name in the draft, because I was like, with all the talk about Carson Beck, I'm just glad he's going to the NFL. And I think it kind of ruins his legacy a little bit because or at least fans don't appreciate it, his legacy of like being a guy in the portal NIL era that sat around for 3 years and waited his turn to start and then was really damn good when he started. Because that's the other thing people talk about. Well, without Bowers and McConkey, it shows how good he actually is. It's like Bowers missed 4 games last year. McConkey missed 5 games last year and was dinged up for a number or more. Like Carson Beck was really good for Georgia, and he wasn't as good this year, but he was still pretty damn good. So Georgia fans are going to convince themselves it's addition by subtraction, and the quarterback that drives the old school pickup truck that doesn't care about NIL, it just loves the university and all that fan stuff. Like they're going to convince them that that's better, and who knows? Maybe Gunnar Stockton and this Georgia offense does look better a year from now.
Well, I think you kind of have to, right? Like you don't want to go into next year with the negative vibe around Gunnar or Ryan Puglisi, because I think it's going to be pretty interesting to see if that's a real. I think it should be an open competition this spring and into the summer and fall between Puglisi and Gunnar. Because I think Gunnar showed some stuff, but I'm a pretty big Puglisi believer there. So, and they're very different quarterbacks, very, very different style. So I don't know. I don't know how it will ultimately unfold with the two of them, but by and large, I think this is a win-win for everybody involved, but I do wonder how Georgia fans look at Carson Beck years from now. And kind of like you, my suspicion is there will be a subset of the fan base that's grateful and enjoyed what he did and will look at him as a good quarterback for Georgia, welcome back with open arms if he wants to. And then I think there is another set where they're like, he left us high and dry. He was never all the way in it. He's the guy who had the Lambo and all that stuff. And just, he didn't care about Georgia the same way Stetson Bennett and Aaron Murray and other Georgia quarterbacks clearly cared. So fair or not, I just feel like he's going to always have a very divided fan base in Athens.
No, that's definitely going to be the perception for sure. And it's not, people are going to forget that this guy waited his turn and everything like that. But yeah, it's funny because I like a week ago on my Voice of College Football show, I ranked like my top Georgia quarterbacks and like by achievements wise, and then like just backyard football based on like I need to put together a team right now to win. Those rankings are a little different. But Georgia fans have a pretty bad track record in terms of their opinion on their quarterbacks. Like there's a lot of Aaron Murray hate for about 3 years until his senior year, and then also like Georgia fans were just not huge Matthew Stafford fans either. Like 2007 goes a little bit different. Things bounce a little bit different. Tennessee somehow loses one of their last 2 games that they lucked out and won against Kentucky and Vanderbilt and got in the SEC championship. If Georgia gets in the SEC championship that year, I fully think Georgia could have won the national championship in 2007. Like that team was great, but Stafford's legacy is kind of remembered as 2008 preseason number 1, and they underachieved. And then he just went to the NFL because he doesn't care about the university. He's just off to the NFL. It's like, that's first of all, that's why they all came to college, was to go to the NFL, right? And it's like Stafford was just really good. If Stafford's career ends with him going to another school, then yeah, no Georgia fans are going to like him at that point. So it's like Carson Beck also could have gone pro last year. And maybe JJ McCarthy's stock was just so high because he won the national championship. But like, I feel like Carson Beck was a better quarterback than JJ McCarthy while in college. Dude was picked 10th overall, like, or 11th or overall or something. Like, he fully could have been a first-round pick, and he said he wanted to come back to Georgia because he wanted to win the SEC. He wanted to win a national championship and do all that unfinished business, all that stuff. So it's unfortunate that I feel like this kind of ruins his legacy. But like I said, I'm not gonna die on the hill defending the guy amongst Georgia fans because now this isn't necessarily the AD Mitchell transferring to Texas for a year to be closer to his daughter and all that. This is like Georgia fans hated so much on this man's girlfriend for no reason at all, and now she's like the reason he ends up at Miami and transfers. It's like, yeah, is what it is. I'm not gonna defend the guy anymore.
Also a great system.
I can understand,
like a great concept, like proof of concept with Cam Ward and company. Like it's just plug and play, and there are good football reasons for Carson Beck to go to Miami next year.
Yeah. I mean, I do think Georgia's receiver room is going to be a lot more improved. So, but there's also talks about like when he got injured. That's what I've heard. Since he got injured, it was like he kind of wasn't in communication with the staff and like kind of doing the injury stuff himself. At least this is according to just kind of reporting out there, that he just wasn't in, communication with the staff as much as they would have liked, and kind of like wasn't, with the team for the preparation, all that kind of stuff. So it sounds like it was kind of a mutual, like, this is best for both parties if we just split ways.
Yeah.
But
On
that's
the
what everyone says when they get broken up with. So,
well, on the other side, something that I've been thinking about, because there's not a lot of movement this week in the portal for Tennessee. They're still just 2, and we'll see what they ended up doing here with some other teams now out of the fold. But the thing I was thinking about was, so one of the things this year I kind of just assumed, just because he was not really a factor again in the tight end room, because Tennessee was going 12 personnel pretty often this season with their issues at offensive tackle throughout the year. But it was Miles Kitselman, the Alabama transfer, who got another year of eligibility. He won that waiver, so he's back, presumably as the starter. Holden Stays didn't really work out for Tennessee this year. He came in from Notre Dame, but he was getting a lot of those reps with Miles Kitselman when they were doing 2 tight end sets, and he was okay. But now he's off to Indiana. Probably a better system for him, more pro style. Just didn't really fit and didn't really look like a clean fit in Heupel's scheme. But Ethan Davis, who is a 4-star from years ago now, from Collins Hill, who put up big numbers at Collins Hill, kind of a wide receiver tight end hybrid, and just has all the talent in the world, and has not really caught on yet at Tennessee thus far with any meaningful snaps. So I just was kind of like expecting him to go into the portal, going after 2 years now, where you're like, maybe it's just it's not a clean fit. It's not gonna be good. It's not gonna work out for Ethan Davis in Knoxville. And then he didn't enter the portal. So something I'm very curious about right now is what the plan is, because we're all very interested in like what new wrinkles Heupel is going to add to this receiver room in 2025. But I also just am kind of curious what this means for Ethan Davis. Is this now him staying and Stays going? And is this and him just wanting to be around for a third year? Just with the nature of the portal, I was kind of surprised that he's going to be on this team again next year. And I think it's a good win, because I still am very, very in on his upside. But we just haven't seen the snaps thus far for Heupel at tight end. So I don't know. I'm very curious what happens. So I just wanted to throw this out for Vol fans of like, feel free to drop them in the comments if you're watching on YouTube about what you think about Ethan Davis in year 3. But I think it's interesting because they have a Desan Brame, 4-star tight end, and another one in Jack Van Dorselaer, 2 4-stars coming in as true freshmen. But he is now the lone vet along with Miles Kitselman. So I think he's clearly going to be a part of the offense next year. And while we're all looking at receiver and everything else, he can be a slot guy. He's got the size and athleticism to be kind of a Swiss Army knife for Tennessee. And I wonder if maybe that's someone to keep an eye on this spring and summer, is where Ethan Davis is at going into year 3 in the program. Because I still think he has all the talent in the world, but I think it's kind of an overlooked one that he did not ultimately end up in the portal this cycle, because I think he can be a really good player if given the opportunity. So I'm excited that he stuck around, because he's still someone that I think could be a really fascinating piece for Tennessee on offense.
Yeah, we know Tennessee needs a little help at that receiver tight end position from what they were in 2024.
Absolutely. Matt Green, you have a take here. You're something you want to throw out here. And I'm very curious which way you go with this, because this is something I had not really thought about before you brought it up in the rundown. So lay it out for us, folks.
Well, let me start by saying that I've seen like this is what got me thinking, as I've seen this narrative as like, oh, the SEC's dominance is over, like, oh, especially the one now that everyone can pay players, now the SEC isn't the best anymore. It's like, okay, fine. You can run with that if you want.
It was pretty funny
I think the
when
SEC
Shane Gillis said that on game day that day. That was hilarious.
No, that was hilarious. Talking straight
Directly to
Saban,
Nick
so.
Saban was just
I thought this
wild
was a
stuff.
fun show. I'm sorry. That was pretty great. But I think what got me thinking was like I still think the SEC is going to be the best year in and year out. Like it's just I don't know. It's like you know it when you see it. Like when you're watching an SEC game, like the product it feels different. You know, maybe I'm a homer there, but that's just how I feel when you're watching the SEC games, like especially how deep the conference is. But it just got me thinking like I feel like, and I've said it all, we said it all year too. Like, I think this was a weak year for the SEC. I'm not excusing the SEC this year. I think it wasn't that deep, or I guess it was a deep conference. There was no great teams in the SEC. It was just everyone was kind of flawed. And like you look at now, like now that this season, that my question was this the least satisfying SEC season you can remember? Because I just started going down the list, like, now that Texas has lost to Ohio State, I mean, you look at what they did. Like their schedule was so easy this year. They played Georgia the first time, 15 points. Played Texas A&M, 17 points. Played Georgia the second time, 19 points, 16 in regulation. And then you go up against Ohio State, 14 points. It's like when they played the best teams on their schedule for the most part, this team just wasn't really impressive all season. And it just had an insanely easy schedule for the SEC. I'm still not sure how they had such an easy schedule. And then you look at like what they did in the playoff compared to a lot of these other teams that have looked impressive that got to the semifinals. Like they were by far the least impressive team that got to the semifinals. Like could have lost to Arizona State, had a really close game with Clemson, the 12 seed. Like I just after 14, 15 games, however many Texas ended up playing, I still don't know how good they were. I look at a Tennessee that I don't know how good Tennessee was. We talked about some of the quarterbacks Tennessee played this past season. Like Bama and South Carolina were the teams that were, you know, oh, we should have been that 12 spot. We should have been the playoff. Like these teams lost 4 games this year. Both lost the bowl game, have no real argument. Ole Miss is a team who at times seemed like the most complete team in this conference. They lost to Kentucky and Florida and LSU, like an unranked LSU team at the end of the season. Like Georgia's the team that had like I don't know, like the most satisfying season in terms of having such a tough schedule, found a way to win the conference, and then you have to play in a playoff game without your starting quarterback. It's like from every angle, and we talked about how flawed Georgia was all season too, right? Like got blown out by Ole Miss, were getting blown out by Alabama before he came back and made it a game. Like made some mediocre quarterbacks, average quarterbacks look really, really good at times this season. And that's the team that won the conference. So just from so many angles, I feel like it's just one of the least satisfying SEC seasons I can remember.
I think that's fair. I think there was just a lot of pretty good in the SEC. Like and it wasn't satisfying in another way in that, like kind of what you're hitting at, where the teams that were really close just had these boneheaded losses that prevented us from really seeing what they could do in a 12-team playoff. Like I would have been very, very curious to see what kind of damage Ole Miss or South Carolina could have done alongside Tennessee and Georgia and Texas in the tournament. We don't know how it would have ultimately gone if they had not dropped an extra game this year. But I think South Carolina really found a gear with Lenora Sellers, but it was a little bit too little too late. Ole Miss, I think, still I'll bang the gavel that they were the best the highest ceiling team of anyone in the SEC, but they beat themselves to your point where, I mean, Tennessee's offense was pretty brutal, especially in the passing game for the majority of the year. Nico didn't have the best first year. Brady Cook took a step back. I think the biggest thing is like quarterback play across the board was down in the SEC. Carson Beck took a step back. Quinn Ewers just up and down, and you saw how that ended. We'll get to that in a second. Jalen Milroe had a bad year. Obviously, Jackson Arnold did not. He imploded at Oklahoma. He gets benched early after the Tennessee game. Like the great quarterback stories were on teams who were non-contenders, like Diego Pavia and Lenora Sellers, and then DJ Lagway coming on late. But like Garrett Nussmeier, another one where preseason LSU, like, oh, could they make a run with Nussmeier? Because I saw a lot of preseason. He's the best quarterback in the conference, and that didn't go well. Peyton Thorne, awful. But Brock Vandegrift did not work out at Kentucky. He's retired. I mean, you look at A&M, Connor Wegman, he didn't work out, now off to Houston. So I think a lot of it was just they really got quarterback wrong in a lot of spots around the conference, and the two best teams in the conference at the end, Georgia and Texas. I mean, one is now off to Miami, and he got hurt at the end, and then the other one didn't come through and kind of had a game that you kind of were waiting on from Quinn Ewers, where just he was not going to be the guy who put it all together at Texas and kind of get you over that final hump, and that worry came to fruition on Friday night.
Yeah, and even from like a traditional SEC perspective, like for Texas to be the last SEC team standing, you're just like, man, I'm not trying to root for Texas. Like they're not one of us yet. It was just. Go ahead.
Well, I don't know. It just kind of was a really, really weird year. To your point, it's just I think what you've been hinting at and what we've been kind of like dancing around all year was like there's just not an elite team. Like there just isn't. Kind of like how I was not a believer in Georgia all year long. You were on that on Texas, and we both ended up being right. I think in a different way where I was just like like I said before the year. I mean, I predicted Oregon to win the national title. I think the thing about the Big Ten versus the SEC right now, and I would argue this against other people. I'm like, I think the top of the Big Ten is more competent and has better coaching right now than the top of the SEC, maybe. I think the best of the best in the top of the Big Ten, like the Ohio State, Oregon, Michigan, I think we'll see. But I mean, you've now gone back to back potentially. Who am I forgetting? Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State. Like they just have a very high floor. Like those top teams are high floor teams. But like I think people got a little bit overboard where it's like they've caught them. I'm like, Purdue was awful. Like there are some bad ones where I think the middle and lower tier Big Ten schools, like the Northwesterns, the Purdues. I mean, I still think Indiana, if they'd gone through just a basic SEC schedule, would be looking at 8-4, probably somewhere around that. I don't think that was the most real team. So I think we've gone way too far in terms of like, oh, the Big Ten's caught the SEC. I think it's just more the top of the top Big Ten are recruiting the same kind of guys as the top of the top in the SEC. So, I mean, there's not a big talent mismatch at the top.
And I think that's why this playoff did such a disservice, because I think everyone in their heart of hearts, like you think Alabama or South Carolina is giving Penn State a better game than SMU. Like, absolutely. Well,
I think all those schools would have the same run Penn State did. Is I think the bigger issue is Penn State just got an unbelievable draw. Like Tennessee gets to where Penn State got. I think South Carolina does. Like they all get there with what Penn State was given.
So Penn State gets to the semifinal, and we're obviously going to get to them, but like they get to the semifinal and they've yet to prove anything that they hadn't proved in a previous season. And so it's like, I don't know that there weren't 4 SEC teams that were better than Penn State this year. You know, like we just, for having an expanded playoff and all this, like we were supposed to have more answers. And I feel like we had less answers this season than we've had in other seasons, because these expanded conferences, we got so many different varying degrees of conference schedules. Like, yeah, Indiana made the playoff. It's like, do we know that Indiana was a good team? Like, no, we don't. They lost to 2 teams, and those 2 teams are playing for the national championship. So, yeah, they could be the 3rd best team in the country theoretically, but they could also like not be a top 25 team because they didn't beat any top 25 teams. So, regardless of what Kirk Signetti might say, he does the top 25 teams. But yeah, and Georgia's definitely one of the most unsatisfying, because like you were saying, you didn't think Georgia was good all year, but Georgia was so battle tested. They just kind of found ways to win, even though it didn't look good for most of the year. And then you don't even really get to prove on the national stage because, you know, you're playing without your starting quarterback, which, you know, maybe some people don't think is as important as I do, but it definitely changed, the team that Georgia was from the first 12 and a half games.
Yeah. Well, before we get into our biggest takeaways from the semifinal games, you have a calendar question for me, Matt Green.
Oh, yeah. Before we get into the games, this is what I wanted to ask you. Did you enjoy the college football semifinals being played on Thursday and Friday night? Just from a spectator perspective, did you enjoy it?
Especially Thursday. Friday was a little bit. I'm like, they got me in the game. I really wanted to watch on a Friday night because I'm like, I got football all weekend. I mean, Fridays. I would not like it in the regular season with high school football, and that I don't like trampling over other folks' designated times. But I think for when it was fine. I think it was okay. I don't have a strong take on it though. I'm not like, oh, let's do it.
See, this was my take. Was I think from just a casual, like neutral perspective, it was like I enjoyed it. It's like you're working 9 to 5, whatever, get off 5, 6 o'clock, and then you got college football to watch, like a sick college football game at 7:30 on a Thursday night, and then do the same thing on Friday as soon as you're done working, like an hour later, you got a great college football game on. From a neutral perspective, like a spectator perspective, I feel like it was like pretty cool. And I guarantee you it'll do an amazing rating, right? And the TV executives love that. But this has been my take forever, like just with the Monday night national championship that they're it does a great number, And that's so it does great ratings. That must mean people love this. And it's like, that's not what it means, in my opinion. Like, yeah, people are going to watch it because people are watching TV on the weekdays, maybe more just kind of as a habit. But if you're actually one of the teams involved, and I reached out to this Notre Dame guy I had on my show, and he basically said exactly what I was saying. Like, if it's actually your team, like, college football is played on Saturday. Like, you want to have that huge game that you can tailgate for, whatever, you travel on the weekend. Like, you got to get multiple days off work for the Thursday game, like not everyone can do that. So I just think from that perspective, it's like we cater so many things to like the casual viewer and like the TV ratings and things. And so they like think, oh, this is doing really well. And I think from a neutral perspective, it was like, it was fine. Like on a Saturday, I'm going to like get together with my friends, go somewhere, watch the game. It's going to be like a big deal. And maybe that's why like there's less individual TVs like tuned in. That's my theory. I don't know. This is a half-baked theory. But I don't know. I think that's got to contribute to it doing better numbers when they do it on those Monday nights, right?
Yeah. That's fair.
But yeah, I don't like it. I in general, like, if my team was involved, it's like, and I kind of experienced this because, December 31st and January 1st are kind of holidays still. So it's like those aren't like regular days of the week, but having the Notre Dame game that following day, whatever, the January 2nd, it was more like a normal work day. And so it's like, this is weird. Georgia playing in a big time college football playoff game on a Thursday. Obviously that one was special circumstances, the only reason they did that. But I think planning to do that on a Thursday, Friday for the semifinals, it just seems weird. Like, give us a 3:30 and a 7:30 on a Saturday. Like, that's like the sweet spot of college football.
There you go. Well, and in terms of the game itself, Matt Green, Notre Dame, Penn State, what was your biggest takeaway from the Fighting Irish getting one more dub and now one dub away from a national title?
To quote the great Dennis Green, sir, Penn State Nittany Lions, they are who we thought they were, sir. It's like, this is who Drew Aller is. I don't care how many times I hear Todd McShay say he's got a first round grade and different people hype this guy up. He's a 5-star. He just looks so average every time they play a good team, and Notre Dame is clearly a good team. I thought with how the first half was going, I thought Notre Dame was like close to or Penn State was close to breaking this thing open. It just felt like they were the better team in the first half, and then you look up early, third quarter, and it's 10-10. I think Riley Leonard played so much better in the second half. Like, I think Riley Leonard was my biggest criticism of Notre Dame coming into this one, because I picked Penn State 21-20, and this game went pretty similar to how I thought it was going to go, because Penn State was able to run the ball. You got Singleton and Allen both over 80 yards in this game, and Tyler Warren, we probably didn't talk about him enough. Like, Tyler Warren is the best individual player I think that was playing in this game, outside of maybe Abdul Carter. Like, Tyler Warren is an absolute freak. And my prediction was that Riley Leonard was going to have to do something in the pass game in order for them to win this game. If Penn State played as well as defensively as Georgia did, which they basically did, and then were able to run the ball and move the ball offensively better, I think Riley Leonard's performance is, I think, ultimately why Notre Dame won this game. Because this may have been his season high passing. I think 229 actually may have been his season high. But yeah, this is one of the 223, 15 of 23. Like, it's crazy how low the bar was for Riley Leonard to contribute some to the passing game. But this is what he had to do. Like, he couldn't have 90 yards passing like he did against Georgia.
Yeah, I mean, Drew Aller, 5.9 yards per attempt. I mean, what the craziest part was no receptions by a receiver in this game. How does that happen?
Yeah, that's insane.
I mean, Tyler Warren.
There weren't many in Ohio State, Texas either.
I mean, it's just the Drew Aller stuff was brutal. I mean, that pick over the middle just can't happen. That was just one where you're like, the Quinn Ewers Drew Aller experience was tough for both parties this week, but I see the flashes with Quinn Ewers. I don't see it at all with Drew Aller. I don't know. I don't know. I sent a buddy a text where I'm like, you are you need to focus on the Trace McSorleys. Like, that's the Sean Cliffords. That's the best version of Penn State football, is the mobile.
This guy looked like Sean Clifford to me. You're calling Sean Clifford mobile?
Oh yeah, Sean Clifford. Yeah, Sean Clifford was a gamer, man. Sean Clifford.
I'm putting Trace McSorley. I'll give you Trace McSorley. I'm not giving you Sean Clifford. Drew Aller is Sean Clifford. This is how Penn State got in this mess.
Hold on. I'm going to pull up Sean Clifford's Penn State stats, because I think you are misremembering Penn State
I
Sean
don't know,
Clifford.
man. I just know he was so
He is
average.
more Christian Hackenberg than
Christian Hackenberg. We're just name dropping Penn State quarterbacks now.
I mean, that's who he is more.
They need a Michael Robinson is what they need.
I'm trying to find his running games. Let's see.
I just feel like they've had average quarterback play for, I don't know, 7 years in a row now.
So is Notre Dame.
No, that's fair. I think that's why I kind of still.
Yeah, here we go,
man.
Don't
know about
2019, 116 carries. 2020, 99. 2021, 99. 2022,
yards?
69. 400, 335, 163, 176.
Yeah, I mean, that's doing a little something.
I'm just saying, I'm not saying he's like a full-on just like triple option Trace McSorley, let's go, but he's got some legs. He at least ran a little bit. Drew Aller is a statue. I just think it's very hard for the statue type quarterbacks to make this work. I think it's no coincidence that the final two quarterbacks are dual threats, and Will Howard and Riley Leonard, where they're able to do a little bit of both. I just think it's hard in the sport to not be able to do both. I mean, you saw the difference with Carson and Stetson Bennett a little bit. I mean, Stetson had legs. Like, Stetson had a good arm, and Stetson was accurate with the deep ball, and he could dice people up. But Stetson, what separated him was he was not afraid of contact and took off when he needed to. Hendon Hooker was the same way at Tennessee. He's the best quarterback for Tennessee in the Heupel era, and he was fearless and ran the ball extremely well. I think it's just really hard to be one-dimensional as a quarterback in 2025. I think it's really hard to. Yeah,
Georgia's also one that's had success with pocket passers. Like just being able to recruit a good enough offensive line, or everything. But I feel like traditionally, I think Penn State, like with what you're doing, like trying to be this kind of ground and pound type team, it feels like a quarterback that's athletic just changes that style completely. Like it just. It feels like a total game changer that, also at any moment when you're running this 3 yards in a cloud of dust, your quarterback can scramble for a 50-yard touchdown. Like, I think, and that's what kind of Trace McSorley kind of had some of that ability. Like, I think Notre Dame feels like how Penn State should probably be building their team, other than the fact that I do feel like Penn State easily could have won this game. Like, I think I still walk away talking about how unsatisfying this season is. Like, we don't really know how good Penn State is based on what they were going into the year and what they are now. It's like, okay, I feel like I still know they're a top 10 program, but are they a top 5 team? I'm still not sure. And Notre Dame too, like, getting this draw that they got, playing Georgia with the QB2 and facing a Penn State team that we still don't like. They're all the way in the national championship, this team, and they lost to Northern Illinois and had what's their next best win in the regular season? Like all of their best wins on the season are right now in the college football playoff. Like USC, is that their best win?
Louisville
like,
a little bit.
Yeah,
Louisville,
that's probably. So it's a very interesting season, but Notre Dame, it feels like if you're going to be that kind of gritty defensive team, having a quarter and running offense, having a quarterback that can get some physical yards, in the run game, I feel like it feels like a game changer, and it just kind of fits the identity that you like want the rest of the football team to be.
Yeah. On the flip side, and this is something I texted you, or is like the BCF toys that I like looking at, BCFtoys.com that does a lot of advanced analytic sites, analytic work for college football. They found that like, what did I send it? Do you have it in front of you of like the last, I think it's 17 champs were either number one in FEI offense or number one in FEI defense. And in the national title here, Notre Dame is number one in defense and Ohio State's number one in offense. So that trend will continue this year. So basically, if your team is not number one overall in either offense or defense, you are not going to win the national championship, which is pretty interesting because I think people thought that with a 12-team playoff, it'd get watered down a little bit. And I'm sure some people don't think we have the best two teams in the final two here, but the numbers like these two teams. And I think they're both pretty good. And even if you don't agree that they're both 1-2, I think Notre Dame's earned the right to say that they're somewhere in that top four in the country, and they're very much deserving to face Ohio State in the national championship game in Atlanta. I'm very curious what the turnout's going to be for both fan bases and what that building's going to look like fan wise. But
I think I heard cheapest ticket was like $1,500 on those secondary sites the other day. So I think those two fan bases are definitely going to show up.
I would have said that. Like, I know they're going to show up. I'm just curious who wins out in terms of a bigger.
Oh, in terms of the percentage.
Yeah,
that'll be interesting. I don't know. Like, I'm not trying to to poo poo the 12-team format. Like, just sounds salty over here as someone whose team got eliminated in the round of 8. I just like keep going back and forth on like figuring out, is Ohio State a good story or not? It's like, yeah, it's a team that got hot at the right time, and they look like the best team in college football. So if a team that appears to be the best team in college football wins it all, it's like, how can that be an unsatisfying turnout, right? Like, Ohio State appears to be the best team in college football, and if they don't win, Notre Dame, some gritty Notre Dame team found a way to upset this juggernaut that is Ohio State. It's a good story either way, other than the fact that it's like, do we want this as college football fans? Like, do we want a year where Ohio State loses one of their big time top 10 games to Oregon, gets upset by their rival Michigan, doesn't make the Big Ten? Oh yeah, and this team goes on to win the national championship because they're clearly the best roster in the sport. It's like, I don't know if it's a good story or not. Like, I don't know. This is what we have now, but it's kind of interesting how I'm feeling after this 12-team playoff. It's like they obviously deserved it playing Tennessee or Oregon and Texas. Like, they've had as tough of a road as anyone in this playoff. But I don't know. I still don't know if like we enjoy this. This was a year where like Ohio State had a down year and they wanted to fire their head coach. And the firing their head coach thing isn't legitimate. Like, that's just some crazy fan talk. But like, in terms of them having a disappointing season through 12 games, like, that's factual. It's like Ohio State had a bad season by their measurement, and they're about to go win the national championship. It's just kind of strange how, yeah, maybe. But I feel like they're the best team. Well, who knows? Well, who knows who I'll pick? But yeah,
Notre Dame's out here. People keep doubting Notre Dame is what they're saying. Like, just keep doubting them.
Yeah,
I think they're the more rootable team, right? Like, I think more of America is going to be cheering for Notre Dame over Ohio State here, right? Like, it speaks to your point of like, I don't know for the best story. I think both are positive stories. I think Notre Dame's the better story, though.
because Notre Dame makes, if it's a 14 playoff, like I know they were seeded, whatever they were seeded, seventh. Yeah. But they would be the 3 seed in a 14 playoff, 100%. Yeah. It would have been Oregon, Georgia, Notre Dame. That 4 seed, maybe it is Ohio State. I don't know. Like Texas and Penn State lost. Maybe it's Tennessee. Who knows? Obviously, they had Ohio State ahead of Tennessee, how it ended up. But what happens to that 4 seed? Like, I don't know. Like Notre Dame had a season where, like, obviously they lost to Northern Illinois, but they went 11-1 and they dominated most of their games. Like they had the type of season where like they would be in the national championship potentially. Like Ohio State didn't have that season, yet they're still here playing for a national championship. And I'm not sure if it's a good thing or not. And it's like, if it was South Carolina that went on or say Tennessee, if Tennessee had done exactly what Ohio State did, do we feel differently about it because it's a new team doing it? Or is Tennessee like, they lost to Tennessee, or they lost to Georgia and lost to Arkansas? They shouldn't even been here in the first place. Like maybe people would be talking like that, but I don't know. I still struggle to wrap my brain around the 12-team format.
Hey, I think it's no doubt about it though, a success. I think this has been a fun 12-teamer, especially the deeper we've gotten here. Both games are great. I mean, you had 31 points in the fourth quarter of Notre Dame Penn State, and it was great in the second half and got super tight late. And then obviously Texas, Ohio State goes down the last little bit there. Texas has an opportunity to tie it up, and they're on the one, and instead of running it in, even just like Arch Manning under center, Arch Manning 4 times, just give him the rock and see what you could do. I mean, I saw someone point out, like, if you're going to recruit all these 5-star big body linemen, then why aren't you using them in this? This is the ultimate tush push. Like, just use your bigger body guys and see if you can win the line of scrimmage 1 out of these 4 times and get in the end zone. That play, man, that play call was wild. The being in the gun and the pitch play to the left, and you're like, what are we doing? Like, and then obviously Quinn Ewers, man, that's just brutal. The scoop and score. Jack Sawyer is going to be a legend in Columbus for many years to come. But that was a dynamic play. You just felt terrible because it was a terrible ending for Ewers and Aller because their last moment really with their 2 teams that they've been quarterbacks of for multiple years. Obviously 2 5-star guys, super talented guys, but man, I mean, it was brutal for both parties, but especially Ewers, because I think Texas played better than I think a lot of folks thought they would play Ohio State. I think a lot of people thought Ohio State would keep blasting folks, and I said on this program I thought Texas would cover and would be right there in this game, and they were. They were right there until the very end, but I think you could still come away impressed by Texas's resolve and giving Ohio State the best game of anyone in the playoff thus far, but also, like, man, I think the Quinn Ewers experience, man, was just, if you're a Texas fan, you're like, I don't know if we're going to have you just never know. Like, you've now been in the Final Four back-to-back years, and you just assume that you'll be back again next year. They're preseason number 1, but the sport, man, you just never know. And the SEC is going to be better. I think the SEC as a whole, kind of going back to our previous conversation, I think the SEC is going to be a lot better next year. And I think they're going to push for minimum 4 in the playoff, but I think 5 are going to have a real case in this conference. I think the SEC top end is going to be a lot stronger than what we saw this year, because I think South Carolina will be right there. I think people who are just assuming Ole Miss is falling off, I don't really understand that. They're still going to be loaded next year. I think.
Yeah, and I mean Alabama
should be better.
Alabama and Ole Miss both get in if they don't just lose an upset,
right?
Like, a fluke upset kind of. I'm not to take any credit away.
Georgia's not going anywhere. I mean, A&M will be right there. I think you can make the case a lot of these programs are going to be even better next year. So I think it's going to be, I don't know. It's going to be hard for Texas to get back and get in the Final Four.
And in terms of like most people, myself included, thought like there's a chance Ohio State could blow out Texas because this team just looks so good. I guarantee you Texas fans sitting at home on their couch were getting so pissed off in the second quarter of this game, because Chris Fowler just kept talking about this game like it was a blowout. Like, oh man, there's that penalty, derailed that drive, or else they would have gone out and scored again. Like, it was like, they scored 1 touchdown to this point. It was like we're sitting at 7-0 like halfway through the second quarter. And then all of a sudden it's 7-7. It's like they were talking in such a way that, like, just anticipating an Ohio State blowout. But yeah, I felt like that first drive just felt so easy. It felt like I thought Ohio State was just going to keep doing what they were doing. But the fact that Jeremiah Smith can have one catch for 3 yards and Ohio State, wins a game in the college football playoff, they won by 2 touchdowns, but it was essentially, a 1-score game until the end. Like that's the most impressive part, I feel like, about this. It's like they shut down Ohio State's best option, and Ohio State still found a way to win. And I think Texas has probably got the best defense, probably the best secondary in the country this year. I don't think there's a chance that Notre Dame is shutting down Jeremiah Smith like that. So it feels like that was what you had to do in order to beat Ohio State, and you still couldn't beat them. Quinn Ewers is going to get a lot of the hate for the loss, but I think this Ohio State defense is just a damn good defense. Like people hating, second guessing on that goal line play. Like obviously you lose 7 yards on a 1st and goal play from the 1. It's a bad play, but it's like Caleb Downs is one of the best defensive players in college football, and dude made an amazing play to blow up the play. They had another guy come in there and clean it up. Like that's why Ohio State is as good of a team as they are. It's like that defense just loaded with playmakers. So yeah, it's obviously, I'm sure Steve Sarkisian regrets it after the fact, but I'm not a second guess every play call kind of guy personally.
That's fair. More offseason concern of getting back to the Final Four next year, Matt Green. Texas or Penn State for you?
I think it's got to be Penn State. Simply because this is Texas's 2nd year in a row in the Final Four. I think their schedule, we talked about how easy it was this year. Like, yeah, maybe it's a little tougher next year if Florida's better or something like that. But they're playing the same team, so there's a chance it won't be that much more difficult. But it just felt like this was kind of everything coming together for Penn State. I think the last 2 years have kind of felt like everything coming together for Penn State, and they just still kind of can't get it done for whatever reason. The one thing I will say, I was talking a lot about, Ohio State. I think they're going to win the national championship or whatever. I feel like a lot of people are treating Texas Ohio State like the Georgia Ohio State game from a couple years ago. That was like, oh, that was the national championship. Like, oh, we know what the end result is going to be. Like, oh, I don't know. Like TCU, like maybe I'm just a salty Georgia fan. I know that TCU team gets hated on way too much. Like they beat Michigan in that playoff. They deserve to get to the national championship. But I don't know. I'm not of the opinion, like I understood it and when Georgia and Ohio State did it, but I'm not of the opinion that Texas was like this juggernaut of a team. Even though I'm saying that they have a better chance of the Final Four next year than Penn State, I don't think we necessarily watched a national championship type of game between Ohio State and Texas on Friday, personally.
When you look at the number 1 defense versus the number 1 offense here on Monday night, Matt Green, next Monday night, which way do you lean right now? You got a little bit of time here before we recap this, but and make our official predictions here. But based on what you've seen to this point, what's your gut after seeing Ohio State take care of Texas and Notre Dame take care of Penn State late? Which way are you leaning? That the defense will ultimately stand tall and the team with the best defense will win it all, or the team with the best offense will win it all?
I don't know. Obviously Notre Dame's number 1 defense, right? And Ohio State's number 1 offense. Where's Ohio State on defense? Notre Dame's defense can't be that much better than Ohio State.
No, Ohio State's right there. I think they're in the top 3.
Yeah, so I think defense is going to be a huge aspect of this game. Like I think the way you saw how Ohio State and Texas, how they both, shut down the run in that game. I think Notre Dame's going to have to do something similar, and like I said, they're going to have to shut down Jeremiah Smith.
And Texas did that for the most part.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what it's going to take. But I don't know. I tend to think with all these weapons they have, and you shut down Jeremiah Smith. It's like, okay, well, Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson are going to be the guys that make plays in the pass game. So I think that just with all the weapons, I think I got to go the offense over the defense.
It is interesting because like Travion Henderson obviously had the 175-yard touchdown catch, but like Jeremiah Smith, 1 reception, 3 yards. Emeka Ibuka only 5 for 51. Cardinal Tate though, I don't think anybody had him 7 receptions, 87 yards in that game. I'm curious what ultimately happens there and if they bounce back because I think Notre Dame is right there. I think they're going to shut down Ohio State's receivers. I think it's going to be they're going to drag them. Like they didn't allow Penn State to do anything through the air, and Penn State obviously wanted to try, and they've had some issues with the passing game, but like Georgia wasn't able to do much against Notre Dame through the air. Notre Dame's pass defense is legit. Notre Dame's front seven is legit. And they're going to press this Ohio State offensive line. And I think anyone who's expecting a blowout, I think, and we'll get into our preview later on, but I think it's going to be a great game. I'm excited for it. I don't know if you are. Like, that's kind of my bigger question to you is, like, are you excited for this final too? Because I am. I think this is going to be a really, really fun back and forth game and against two powerhouses here down the stretch and two teams that I think have very much earned it. I don't feel like a TCU situation here, Matt Green. Not to poo-poo TCU's
run. What are
you
saying? They didn't earn it?
I mean, they didn't go through it was a 14 playoff. Like TCU probably doesn't make it in the 12-team format.
See,
I don't think so.
No, I disagree wholeheartedly, sir.
You enjoyed it. You can do all this. You beat them 65-7.
TCU
like it was,
beat Michigan. It's like
no. I'm saying they had to beat Michigan and maybe Tennessee and somebody else to get to Georgia. Of course,
it was going to be difficult. Alabama or something.
Yeah.
It was definitely going to be difficult, but I hate that TCU always gets thrown in there because they lost 65-7. It feels like people act like TCU sucked more than it's like maybe we're watching an all-time great Georgia team. Like when LSU and Miami or 0-1 Miami and 2019 LSU are blasting people in the national championship, it's because of how great they are. And I think people just want to poo-poo TCU. It's like they beat Michigan, the undefeated Michigan team that won the Big Ten, and the team that beat Ohio State. So this idea that like TCU didn't deserve to be in the national championship, I just push back on that. Like they earned it as much as anyone in the 4-team playoff era earned getting to the national championship.
Final one here for you. It's kind of a futures question that I'm curious, and I've been thinking about the last couple days. I was going through the transfers, what the rosters are going to be, and I'm really curious because I mean we'll see if Ryan Grubb ends up back at Alabama as co-OC or something with Nick Sheridan in Tuscaloosa under Kalen DeBoer. Ty Simpson seems like he could be a better fit for what Kalen DeBoer is looking for in a pocket guy who just kind of picks apart teams from the pocket, kind of like what Michael Penix did his 2 years under DeBoer in Washington. I think there's a lot of reason for optimism in year 2 for DeBoer and Alabama. LSU obviously have gone hard in the portal. Garrett Nussmeier's back. I think that's a big win for them. A lot of pressure now on Brian Kelly with Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame in the national title game, and he left to like what he thought.
That's brutal.
It is brutal. And then Ole Miss, who I kind of talked about, where I'm like, people have really just like, oh, they're going to lose all this. They're going to lose Walter Nolan and Princely and Kevin. I'm like, have y'all looked at who they're bringing back? I mean, their receivers, I think, are really good. I think Austin Simmons showed some stuff in that Georgia game when he was thrust into action after Jackson Dart got injured early. I think there's a lot of reason for optimism with Simmons under center. I don't think Ole Miss is going anywhere. I think Ole Miss is going to be really good again next year. But I think one of the three ends up winning 10 games and making the CFP. But as of right now, Matt Green, which way do you lean? Has the best year of those three? It's early.
That's a good question. And obviously none of these teams won 10 games this year. It's hard for me to think Alabama's better next year. Like we've seen a lot of guys in year 2 have more success, but with DeBoer like following Saban, I don't know. It's like it feels a little different. Like why weren't you already good? Like we saw this Alabama team win the SEC the year before. So I don't know. I think I tend to lean LSU. They've just been making so much noise in the portal this offseason already. And I am kind of subscribing to what you were criticizing of. I think 2024 felt like Ole Miss's best shot to do it. I don't know I don't know exactly what Ole Miss is in 2025 and beyond. Like I definitely don't trust them to be the team that we can just count on year in, year out. I mean, this was the year that we were supposed to count on them, and they still lost 3 games. So I think I'd have to go LSU between those 3 teams for 2025.
I mean, Ryan Williams is back. Jerry Menard is back. They bring in Isaiah Horton, who I wanted Tennessee to get from Miami. He was really productive at Miami. I like Bama's 3 receivers. And I think Simpson, there was buzz coming out last year that he looked really good in the spring. And that he, if Milroy wasn't there, do you just go to straight up Simpson? And clearly they feel comfortable with Simpson because they did not go out and get a transfer quarterback. And he's back. So,
well, and they brought in the 5-star freshman too.
Yeah, it's just hard to start as a true freshman, man. Like it's just hard. Doesn't mean it can't happen, but I don't know. Well, I'll believe it when I see it. I think Simpson has a big potentially up. Like I would buy a lot of Simpson stock. The LSU stuff. We're at a point now where I'm fading LSU. I would probably go 1 Bama, 2 Ole Miss, 3 LSU. Where, yeah, maybe Garrett Nussmeier has that final unlocked, just another year in the system and everything else. But I don't know, man. They're living in the portal still a little bit too much. I mean, the vibes are all-time bad after losing Bryce Underwood to Michigan late in the process. They lost a lot of talent to the draft and in the portal at receiver. I don't know. I think LSU could be really good next year. I think the floor is still really high with Brian Kelly. Like he's still a really good coach. And I think like 9-3, I think 8-4 is probably their floor. But if I had to bet on it, I would say like probably 8-4, 9-3 again. Like I'm not over enthused at what LSU's done here. I mean, they bring back Harold Perkins. I guess that's good. But I don't know. I need to see it at this point. Like Ole Miss, I saw it this past year. Ole Miss, I saw a team that was just a dumb home loss from against Kentucky away from making the CFP and potentially making some serious noise in the CFP. But I mean, they curb stomped Georgia in a way that we haven't seen anybody do that in years. So I think Lane Kiffin's got a really good thing humming. And I understand there's some turnover, but I mean, they're going to be good. I would be surprised if Ole Miss falls off in a significant way.
You're talking about relying in the portal, like LSU, like that's Ole Miss is built through the portal.
But
like I think
it's a little bit overblown. I mean, their quarterback next year is going to be in-house. Like they go a little bit harder than others, but I think, but
look at some of these recruiting classes.
I think they're in the top 20 this year in recruiting.
In this that's up incoming class?
Yeah, I think they're top 20.
I thought they were like 40 something. They've been like in the 40s and 50s.
No. They're in the 20s. They're in the top 20 in this year's class.
Okay. Their high school classes have not been great though, like year in and year out. Like I don't know. They're relying a lot on the portal. We'll see.
They were 16th this year.
Okay. I don't know if I'm a believer in them year in and year out. And for the
Penn
record,
State's ahead of them. What I'm saying is like people have really overblown
any of them
them.
are going to win 10 games, to be fair.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think people have gone way too hard on Ole Miss, saying that they're not the full time. They're in a much better place than Florida State. Like it's a sustainable model.
Yeah, what does that mean? No one's talking about Florida State.
Florida State went hard at the portal, and they cleaned house, and the vibes are bad. Like Ole Miss, they reloaded, and I trust their talent evaluators.
This was FSU's 2023 year. Like this was that was what Ole Miss was. They didn't have. Next year is when we'll see.
Lane Kiffin's won double-digit games all 3 years now, right?
But I'm saying this is the year that was like they were getting legit national championship talk. Like Florida State's year, at least they went 13-1. They try to act like they went 13-0, but they played 14 games that year. They went 13-1. Like Ole Miss, their year, they went 10-3. Like, and we haven't seen the follow-up year either. Like there's a chance they drop off the cliff. And if they're not going to do what Florida State did, they're not winning 2 games, or did they end up 2-10? Oh, I don't even know I don't even know. So they're not going to do that. But I mean, there's a chance. Like, would you be shocked if Ole Miss just won like 6 games next year?
Yes.
Like, I mean, the SEC's a gauntlet, man. Maybe their schedule.
In 2020, they only had 10 games, and he still went 5-5 in his first year at Ole Miss. I mean, yes, that would surprise me.
Yeah, maybe that's maybe
10 wins, 11 wins, 8 wins, 10 wins for him. And
I'm just saying, I don't think Ole Miss is a team that's built on like a super solid foundation. Like I
think they're really good at evaluating in the portal and evaluating. I think they're good. I just think they're a smart program.
We'll see. I'm not necessarily a believer on them like in the long term just yet.
That's fair. Well, that's all I've got, Macarene. Anything you want to throw out there before we wrap up tonight?
That's all I got, man. Looking forward to a one last college football game this year. It's a sad thought.
Hey, and we get to recap. We'd do a live show after Tennessee puts the smackdown on the Dogs here in Knoxville on Wednesday night.
Hey, absolutely, man. Let's do it.
You got to watch it though, Matt Green. I know you're hit and miss in watching the Dogs when they're not playing football. So make sure you are locked in because I will want to talk about it on the show.
I just can't. I can't multitask, so I can't be locked into basketball while football is still going on. But
baseball is gonna be great because you're top 4 this year and you're all Braves and everything else. I'm like, all right, let's see if Matt locks in because if the Georgia baseball team doesn't get him this year, I don't know when they're gonna get him.
I'm not promising to follow baseball. I'll keep track of Major League Baseball. That's about it.
Matt Green, always a pleasure, and I will talk to you in a couple days.
Yes, sir.
Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas Podcast. Hell yeah.